Shalom. So we already facing the east. Let's give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. And be giving all praises to the Most High, whose true name in Hebrew is Yahweh, in the name of his only begotten Son, whose true name in Hebrew is Yahweh Shai, and the Holy Spirit, which in the ancient Hebrew is the Rakakwadash. Double honor to the elders and apostles who taught us this truth by the Holy Spirit. Honor to the brothers, making their bodies a living sacrifice to push the gospel, and peace and blessings to the hope to the elect, which would be so-called Negroes, Latinos, Native Americans, and Seminole Indians, who make up the lost 12 tribes of Israel, according to scripture and according to prophecy. But the hopeful elect would be 1/3 of the Israelites who will be turned back to the Most High during the last days, which is right now, to receive salvation. We'll be back with another live lesson through the mercy of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shah. And this lesson is going to be Wisdom of David, number 59. Wisdom of David, meaning we're going to be in the book of Psalms. So it's Psalms chapter 59. We're going to get the first half of the chapter, Lord willing. So we're going to start at the little area right above verse 1. I guess they would call it the subheading. But it say this: A to the chief musician, a psalm of David, when Saul sit and they watched the house to kill him. So David wrote Psalms 59 when Saul sent men after David to track him down and to watch him and to kill him. So let's get verse 1, to see how David opens up with Psalms 59, which Psalms is all prophecy. So a psalm of David or a prophecy of David. So things that David spoke of here in the book of Psalms, we see it playing out again today through the Spirit. It says, deliver me from my enemies, O Lord. Defend me from them that rise up against me. And so David constantly prayed to be delivered from his enemies, to be defended from those that rise up, that rose up against him. And that's even today. That's why we're known as the house of mourning. We constantly cry out to be delivered from our enemies, to be defended in the times when everybody's gonna rise up against us. And do you notice David always cried out about his enemies or his bloody men, those that seek after his soul. He never cried out about the devil and Satan and Lucifer, whatever you want to call them. Some imaginary creature, which, the spirit of Satan is real, but he's not the one we need to be delivered from. We need to be delivered from our enemies, which would be those who would be influenced by the spirit of Satan. And, in the sense of in the context of Psalms 59, David was talking about his enemies being the house of Saul, primarily. And that would be today. That would be the 2/3 of our people. A prophecy gonna show, according to prophecy, that our enemies, ain't just Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, like a lot of Israelites think. Be the other nations. It's gonna also be the 2/3 of our people, those who don't serve the Heavenly Father. But now we're gonna read this again, and then we're gonna jump to the book of Psalm, 1 Samuel 19. So, to the chief musician, a psalm of David, when Saul sent and they watched the house to kill him. But they deliver me from my enemies, O Lord, defend me from them that rise up against me. So we're gonna get 1 Samuel 19, verses 1 through 19. We're gonna see what happened, what David is talking about. So we can kind of dive into his mindset and apply it to now. Because David went through it before he sat on the throne. Hey, the house of David the elect, we're going to go through it before we sit on our thrones. Yahweh Shai, said that in Matthew 19, those who forsaken all. But this is 1 Samuel 19:1. Saul spake to Jonathan, his son, and to all his servants that they should kill David. But Jonathan, Saul's son, delighted much in David, and Jonathan told David, saying, my father seeketh to kill thee. Now therefore I pray thee, Take heed to thyself until the morning, and abide in a secret place and hide thyself. And I will go out and stand beside my father in the field where thou art, and I will commune with my father of thee, and what I see, that I will tell thee. And Jonathan spake good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, let not the king sin against his servant, against David. Let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he have not sinned against thee, and because his works have been to thee work very good. For he did put his life in his hand when he slew the Philistine, and the Lord wrought a great salvation for all of Israel. Thou sawest it and did rejoice. Wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood to slay David without cause? So Saul is telling his father, David has been nothing but a blessing to your kingdom and to your house. So are you going to slay innocent blood? And Saul hearkened to the voice of Jonathan, and Saul sware, as the Lord liveth, he shall not be slain. Hey, so Saul promised that he wouldn't do nothing to David. And Jonathan called David, and Jonathan shewed him all these things, and Jonathan brought David to Saul, and he was in his presence as in times past. And there was war again, and David went out and fought with the Philistines, and slew them with a great slaughter, and they fled from him. And the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, as he sat in his house with his javelin in his hand, and David played with his hand. So the Lord ultimately, put an evil spirit on Saul. And that evil spirit is going to be put on the house of Saul today, which would include the 2/3 of our people. And what? They're going to seek to slay us. Yahweh Shai spoke about that. Really, all of the prophets spoke about it. This dumbass phone. It says, and Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence. And he smote the javelin into the wall, and David fled and escaped that night. Hey, so Jonathan brought David to Saul. Saul got an evil spirit put on him, tried to kill David. David got away. He escaped that night. Verse 11, Saul also sent messengers. He sent mighty men, men of war. And Saul would send these men out by the thousands just to hunt down David. Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him and to slay him in the morning. So, David on the run, he pretty much can't be nowhere in Israel at this point. Even when he go to foreign lands, Saul sending out messengers and spies to hunt down David. David at home, Saul sending mighty men of war by the thousands to go camp outside his house to kill him as soon as he come out. Hey, so David was going through it. Like my mom was saying, hey, probably made it hard for him to sleep. How could you sleep? All the other nations wanted David's head because David was, defeating them. And then the house of Saul, his own people, was after David. All right, Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him and to slay him in the morning. And I think I don't know how to say it, David's wife told him, saying, if thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. So David's wife, which was Saul's daughter, told David, hey, you're gonna be dead in the morning if you don't flee right now. So Michal let David down through a window, and he went and fled and escaped. And Michal took an image and laid it in the bed, and put a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster, and covered it with a cloth. So David fled through the window, and pretty much Michal, David's wife, is gonna set up, I guess, a dummy or a mannequin in the bed to make it look like David in the bed asleep. And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said he is sick. So, after Michal told Saul's messengers that David is sick, they had no mercy. They was like, okay, let me go to him while he's sick on his bed so we can kill him. Let me read that again. And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she said he is sick. And Saul sent the messengers again to see David, saying, bring him up to me in the bed that I may slay him. So they didn't even care that he was sick, although he really wasn't. He had already left. And when the messengers were come in, behold, there was an image in the bed with a pillow of goat's hair for his bolster. And Saul said to Michal, which was his daughter, why hast thou deceived me and sent away my enemy that he is escaped? And Michal answered Saul, he sent it to me, let me go. Why should I kill thee? So David fled and escaped and came to Samuel to Ramah and told him all that Saul had done to him. And Samuel went and dwelt in Naioth. And it was told to Saul, saying, behold, David is at Naioth and Ramah. So they was constantly spying and tracking down David. But when we get back to Psalms 59:1, now it makes sense when David, well, I ain't gonna say now it makes sense, but I'm gonna say now we got more understanding of why David opened up Psalms 59. It says, deliver me from my enemies. Oh Lord, defend me from them that rise up against me. And this is why, the true doctrine of Yahweh Bashim Yahushua, it's not about gathering all black people or everybody that's an Israelite. It's only about gathering a remnant, which means a few. Because, hey, some of our worst enemies here at the end is going to be they of our own household. And that's why Yahweh Shai said this in the book of Matthew 10:36. A man's foes, matter of fact, let me go up. 34, think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace but a sword. Sword represents division and judgment. 35, for I am come to set a man. I'm reading the NLT. I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. KJV, verse 36, and the man's foes should be there of his own household. But that's why David said, deliver me from my enemies, which Matthew 10:36 in the NLT says, your enemies will be right in your own household. So your enemies is going to be they of your own household, people you live with, people you stay with. I believe in bigger than that. Because when you look up the word household in the Greek, it says relatives. And your relatives ain't just anybody you call family, but the people of your own nation. Because really, Saul and David, different families, but they, distant relatives. They're the same nation. So it's going to be your very own people that's going to also rise up against the elect here at the end. Why? Ultimately because we fear the Lord. That's why 2 Ezra 16 say there should be a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord, upon those who fear the Lord. And that's going to be Esau leading the charge and rising up against us. And 2/3 of our people are going to take the opportunity to destroy us and follow along. Now we're going to get Psalms 59, verses 2-3. Deliver me from the workers of iniquity and save me from bloody men. And I got to make mention, verse 1, deliver me from my enemies, O Lord, defend me from them that rise up against me. David was speaking about the house of Saul, which that's going to be 2/3 of our people today, but really, the whole earth. Also, first and foremost, Esau, Edom, the so-called white men of the nations. And 2/3 of our people going to be right along with them. Psalm 59:2, deliver me. Let me make sure my volume I think it's working. Hey, Shalom, daughter Yahweh Bahashim Yahushua Barakazam. Psalm 59:2, deliver me from the workers of iniquity and save me from bloody men. And David was speaking about the house of Saul. And then when you look in the NLT for bloody men, it says murderers, bloodthirsty, bloodshedders. Hey, so Saul was a bloody man, because we did a lesson a few weeks back. He had Doeg the Edomite kill 70 priests. Saul also sent Doeg to Nob, which is the city of the priests, kill all the priests, their wives and their children and their livestock. And so Saul was a bloody man. You know, he had innocent blood on his hands, the blood of the priests. Then also, he sought to slay David. But we understand that in this lifetime, the workers of iniquity and the bloody men ain't just, you know, the house of Saul, who's back today, 2/3 of our people, that's going to seek to destroy us, but Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, and all of the other nations that's joined to him and cutting off Israel. Psalm 59:2, deliver me from the workers of iniquity, save me from bloody men. For lo, they lie in wait for my soul, the mighty are gathered against me, not for my transgression, nor for my sin, O Lord. So, you know, David prayed to be delivered because the workers of iniquity, the bloody men, they lie in wait for his soul. And back then, bloody men was, you know, tracking down David, searching him out to destroy him. But in the spirit, you know, this would be prophetic because, hey, David is back today. And what the enemies of David, house of Saul, 2/3 of our people, the other nations, they seeking to slay David once again. But not just David whom they seek to slay, but the whole house of David they seek to destroy. So again, David prayed to be delivered from the workers of iniquity and the bloody men. And that's why we need the Lord. And when we get this in the book of Luke 1:68, it say this: Blessed be Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, God of Israel, for he hath visited and redeemed his people. And he hath raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David. That horn of salvation, that's Yahushai, who the world calls Jesus, the deliverer. As he spake by the mouth of his holy prophets, which have been since the world began, that we should be saved from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us. So Yahushua is going to save us. What it say? It say, from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us. So we're going to be saved from everybody that hates us. The elect is going to be saved from everybody that hates them and now rises up against them. Ain't just Esau you got to be saved from. Yeah, first and foremost, you got to be saved from Esau, Edom, the white man, and the nuclear destruction. Hey, but we got to be saved from our own people. Hey, our worst enemy besides Esau, man, I might say our worst enemy is ourselves. Hey, because the worst enemy is the one that you don't know is the enemy. It's obvious that Esau, the white man, is the enemy at this point. But you got it, not only enemies on the outside, Esau and the other nations, but you got enemies within. That's why Yahushua said a man's foes or his enemies will be dead of his own household. So you got enemies on the inside. But what it say, Luke 1:68, to be delivered, to be saved from our enemies and from the hand of all that hate us. Now let's see who's all gonna hate us. Now let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 9. So again, to be delivered from all that hate us. Esau, Edom, the white man, the other nations, also 2/3 of our people, we need saving from them too. But this is why Matthew 24:9, it says, then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted. And who's going to deliver us up? They of our own household. It says, and shall kill you. So they're going to cause, hey, some of our own people going to cause, hey, some of the elect to get put to death, you know, for the sake of the gospel. It says, and you should be hated of all nations for my name's sake. So the enemy ain't just Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. That's obvious. Also, the other nations, the heathen Gentile nations. But it says you be hated of all nations. That's including your own nation. David back then was hated by his own nation. You know, not all of Israel, but by the house of Saul. And again, not all of the house of Saul, because, you know, Jonathan, but technically he's the house of Saul. So we will be hated of all nations here at the end. That's why we would need to be delivered from our enemies, and all, meaning everybody that hates us, which includes some of our people. Now we're going to get this also. We're going to come back to the book of Psalms 59:2. deliver me from the workers of iniquity, save me from bloody men. And we went into that word bloody men. It means to be bloodthirsty murderers, shedders of blood, which Saul had innocent blood on his hand. But Psalms 59:3, it says, "For lo, they lie in wait for my soul. The mighty are gathered against me, not for my transgression, nor for my sin, O Lord." So David said, "The mighty are against me." Because when it says, no, sometimes it says David or Saul sent messengers to kill David. In other parts, it says Saul sent soldiers to kill David. You know, back in the time when Israel had their own kingdom, we had our own military. So Saul today will be sending the military. Um, well, that's the word we would use today, the military. So Saul was sending his military after David. That's why David said, "For lo, they lie in wait for my soul. The mighty are gathered against me." And we're gonna show that. We're gonna show that that's, you know, go back to 1 Samuel 19:1 to show how the mighty gather against David to kill him. 1 Samuel 19:1, Saul spake to Jonathan, his son, and to all his servants. So Saul spake to all his servants. That would be thousands, you know, tens of thousands, that they should kill David. That's why David said, "They lie in wait for my soul. The mighty are gathered together against me." Now we gonna get this. Also, we gonna come to to verse 11 in 1 Samuel 19. Also, verse 11, it says, "Saul also sent messengers unto David's house." In other words, soldiers. In other words, the military, mighty men, to watch him and to slay him in the morning. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, "If thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain." So they knew David. You couldn't send nothing but mighty men to kill David, because the whole world, you know, at least definitely amongst the Philistines and the house of Israel and the other nations in the area, and they knew what David did to Goliath. So you had to send mighty men after David. But how would that apply today? Back to Psalms 59:3, "For lo, they lie in wait for my soul." Well, the wicked, being Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, the other nations, 2/3 of our people that's confederate with Esau, they're cutting off the righteous, and they're gonna lie in wait for our soul here at the end. That's why Yahweh said, Matthew 24:9, they should deliver thee up and they should kill you. You should be hated of all nations, you know, for his sake. But we also gonna get this. Yeah, and the mighty are gathered against me, because it's gonna be the world's military force, which would be the UN soldiers. Esau Edom, the white man's military, different militia groups, and 2/3 of our people who Esau gives a badge to and the right to kill us. Hey, they're gonna be gathered against us. They're gonna make us enemy of the state, and they're gonna use every form of weapon against us that they can. So that's why David said, "For lo, they lie in wait for my soul." Yeah, that was true back then, but it's also true today through the Spirit, you know, through prophecy. "And the mighty are gathered against me." The mighty again gonna gather against David, but David not just speak about himself, but the whole house of David. So now we gonna get Psalms 59:3 again. Then we gonna take that into verse 4. "For lo, they lie in wait for my soul. The mighty are gathered against me." Oh, it also says, "Not for my transgression, nor for my sin. They run and prepare themselves without my fault. Awake to help me, and behold." So what does it mean in verse 4? They run and prepare themselves without my fault. Let's read that in the NLT. In the NLT it reads, I have done nothing wrong, yet they prepare to attack me. Wake up and see what is happening to me. So, but that's why verse 3 says, they lie in wait for my soul, the mighty are gathered against me, not for my transgression, nor for my sin. So Saul wasn't sent, mighty men after David because David had done something wrong. David said, not for my transgression, not for my sin. And Saul was constantly reminded by Jonathan and other priests, that David did nothing against you. But we're going to show that real quick. So we're going to come to the book of 1 Samuel 19. We're going to get 4 through 5 to show that mighty men were sent after David again, not because he did it, not for transgression, not for sin, because David had did nothing wrong. This is 1 Samuel 19. I'm going to give verse 1, then we're going to get 4 and 5. 19 and 1. And Saul spake to Jonathan his son and to all his servants that they should kill David. Then when we jump down to verse 4, it says, and Jonathan spake good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, let not the king sin against his servant against David, because David hath not sinned against thee, and because his works have been to thee work very good. So Saul, or Jonathan, the son of his father Saul, David has done nothing but good towards you. Verse 5, he did put his life in his hand and slew the Philistine. And the Lord wrought a great salvation for all of Israel. So David constantly put his life on the line to please Saul. Whatever Saul needed, David was the man to do it. Aside from the BS that Saul was having others do, David never did no BS. But it says, thou sawest it and rejoice. So even Saul rejoiced at the salvation that the Lord brought for Israel through David. When he slew Goliath and all of the other battles that David won. He slew the Philistine, and the Lord wrought a great salvation for all Israel. Thou sawest it and did rejoice. So David, or Saul, was celebrating and cheering along too at David's victory for Israel. Wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood to slay David without cause? So Jonathan is checking his father Saul. Are you gonna kill David? You gonna kill him for no reason? But that's why David said, Psalm 59 and 3. For lo, they lie in wait for my soul. The mighty are gathered against me, not for my transgression, nor for my sin. So they really had no reason to be on David like they was. It says they run and prepare themselves without my fault. In the NLT, it reads, yet they prepare to attack me, though I did nothing wrong. And how does that apply today? Well, the 2/3 of our people that rise up against the elect, also known as the house of David here at the end. Lord wouldn't be part of that, but the house of David, the elect, when the 2/3, come after them, to try to get them killed, the house of David, the elect, they didn't do nothing to the 2/3 of our people. All they did was fear the Lord and serve the Lord. Yet they still gonna come up against the house of David, against the elect, not for any reason. Really just because, just as the Lord put an evil spirit on Saul, and the Lord has already put an evil spirit on the 2/3 of our people. But it's gonna be a greater evil spirit put on them as things move forward. But again, David said, the mighty are gathered against me, not for my transgression, not for my sin. And he goes on to say, in verse 4 again, where am I? They run to prepare themselves, they prepare to attack without my fault. Meaning they seek to destroy him, although he's done nothing wrong. But we're going to get this also in the book of Psalms chapter 35, verse 12. Phone tripping. Let me go here. That's why David said this in Psalms 35 and 12. Ah, this is Psalms 35 and 12. It say this. It says, they rewarded me evil for good to the spoiling of my soul. So David, when he wrote that, he said they rewarded me evil for good. And that will be talking about Saul, the house of Saul. All of the stuff, all of the good stuff that David did for the house of Saul, they rewarded David with evil. They sought to destroy him and made life miserable for David. David, it got so bad. David was so desperate that him, his family, and the men, the mighty men of David, for a minute they had to live among the Philistines. They had to live among the enemy. But again, Psalms, I already lost it. Psalms 35 and 12, they rewarded me evil for good to the spoiling of my soul. Now we're going to show that that's talking about, Saul. This is going to be 1 Samuel 24 and 16. Forgive me, phone getting a little hot. Come on. Nope. We're going to come to the book of 1 Samuel 24 and 16. All right, and it say, and it came to pass when David had made an end of speaking these words unto Saul, that Saul said, is this thy voice, my son David? And Saul lifted up his voice and wept. So again, Saul lifted up his voice and wept. Verse 17, and Saul said unto David, thou art more righteous than I, for thou hast rewarded me good, whereas I have rewarded thee evil. So again, Saul said unto David, thou art more righteous than I, for thou hast rewarded me good, whereas I have rewarded thee evil. That's why Psalm 35 and 12, David said, for good, they rewarded me with evil, for the spoiling of my soul. And how do we do good? How do the house of David, to serve the prophets, how do we do good to our people today? By bringing them this word, this word which can save their soul. And David was merciful to Saul as well, which that's going to have an important factor about the story and the war between the house of David and the house of Saul play out. Hey, David was full of mercy. He could have killed Saul numerous times. He spared them. He could have killed his men numerous times, caught them slacking, but he spared them. And David always sought, the welfare and the good for Saul, but Saul didn't do the same for David. And we do that today. We merciful to the two-thirds of our people. They do wrong for us. Hey, we don't seek to destroy them. We move on. Even within the truth, if we get wronged by somebody that's so-called in the truth or out of the truth, hey, we just move on. Hey, vengeance is the Lord's. But ultimately, we do good to them and show mercy by trying to bring this word to them. And what the scriptures say, have I become your enemy because I told you the truth? So because you do the good thing, try to bring this word to them. When the mark of the beast, which is the RFID microchip, is mandated, we're gonna continue to do good to them by telling them, hey, don't take that microchip, don't take that mark of the beast, and they're gonna continue to be an enemy to us. They're gonna continue to reward us with evil by trying to get us killed, because we bring them this word which can save their life. So that's how that's going to play out again, in the spirit, through prophecy, which is happening right now. All right, so now we going we just have to flip through the book. Is it even going still bad? Oh my goodness, bro. I can't stand these devices. Oh, God. Bro, it's crazy. Literally, the only thing that's not working is my app where my notes are at. Everything else working, man. Oh, they killing me. Hey, Shalom to the brother you want to talk about carp. Yeah, how about you outside Barakathon? Oh, damn time. Fucking damn, bro. Yeah, man. So, um, back to first Sam. Back to Psalms 59 in verse 4. They run and prepare themselves without my fault. Awake to me and behold. So before that, David said they gather against him, not for his transgression, not for his sin, and that's gonna be the case here in the future. They gonna gather together to destroy us, not for any real reason. When the house of David, the servants, the prophets, have been nothing but a blessing to the house of Saul, who's back today, and to the 2/3 of our people. Been a blessing to them by bringing them this word. They're gonna seek to destroy us. Now, that's again, we was talking about the mercy, but that's why David said, awake to help me and behold. So when David says, awake to help me, David was crying out for help. That's why we known as, the house of mourning. House of David, the elect, we crying out for help today. Now that help is going to come through judgment. That help, that deliverance is going to come through judgment. Because again, David says, awake to help me. Awake meaning, to arise. This punk ass phone. So we're going to jump here. I don't know why I did that. We're going to jump here to the book of Psalm 76. And it say this. It says, arise, O Lord, in thine anger. Lift up thyself because of the rage of my enemies. So David's crying out to the Lord, to rise up. It says, and awake. And what did it say in Psalms 59:4? The end of verse 4, awake to help me. So the Lord awakened, and the Lord helping. How does that play out? This is, again, Psalm 76. It says, and awake for me to the judgment that thou hast commanded. So that help is going to come through the judgment that the Lord is going to execute on the enemies, those that rise up against the house of David being the elect. So that help is going to come through judgment being executed. Now we're going to get this also in Psalms 59:5. It says, thou therefore, Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, God of hosts, the God of Israel, awake. Meaning to arise to the judgment. It says, awake to visit all the heathen. Be not merciful to any wicked transgressors. So David is praying to the Lord, Lord, be not merciful. Lord, don't show no mercy to wicked transgressors. But David wrote this when he was running from Saul. So David was putting curses on and praying against his enemies, which would be the house of Saul. Not just Esau, Edom, the white man, and the other nations. But it says, be not what it say? It said, awake to visit the heathen. And the heathen are going to be visited through judgment. Now, let me get that real quick. we gonna come to the book of Obadiah 1:15, because these are the days we in right now. It says, "For the day of the Lord is near upon all of the heathen." That what David was talking about in Psalms 59:5. How about Shemi Hawashah, Lord of hosts, God of Israel, awake to visit all the heathen. You know, awake and bring judgment to the heathen, which that judgment in the heathen includes 2/3 of our people. But again, Obadiah 1:15, "For the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen, as thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee." So as the heathen has done, it shall be done unto them. It says, "Thy reward shall return upon thine own head." So what they sow is what they're going to reap. Now, what they've done, what the heathen has done to the house of Israel, and what the 2/3 of our people have also done to the house of Israel, what Saul did to David back then was show no mercy. That's why it said, as thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. They showed no mercy, so they're going to get no mercy. But that's why verse 5, David said, "Be not merciful to any wicked transgressors." Not just Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, but any wicked transgressors, including the 2/3 of Israel. But this is going to be the book of James. I need some shade for this phone. This is the book of James 2:13. "For he shall have judgment without mercy that have showed no mercy, and mercy rejoices against judgment." So yeah, you know, Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, the nation who showed no mercy to the house of Israel, they're going to be judged with no mercy. But bringing this back to 1 Samuel chapter 19, let's get something there, how Saul showed no mercy to David. It says, "Saul sought to smite David even into the wall with the javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence. He smote the javelin into the wall. David fled and escaped that night." So David escaped Saul. It says, "Saul also sent messengers to David's house." You know, after you don't have so many attempts on something and it don't work out, the spirit should probably tell you that ain't meant to be. You know, David escaped Saul multiple times. Saul should have came to the conclusion, what I'm doing ain't meant to be. This must not be what the spirit wants. Hey, but Saul continually to pursue David to kill him. Even to the point, now he sent messengers to his house to watch him and to slay him in the morning. And then when you come down to verse 14, it says, "And when Saul sent messengers to take David, she, you know, Michal, said he is sick." Saul didn't even care that David was sick. Saul sent the messengers again to see David, saying, "Bring him to me in the bed, that I might slay him." So Saul sent mighty men to tell Michal, David's wife, "Take me up to where he's at, sick on the bed, so we can kill him there." So Saul showed no mercy to David. And what is James 2:13? "He shall be judged without mercy to him that showed no mercy." So the Lord had no mercy on Saul. You know, it tell you that Saul and his whole house, all of his sons, even Jonathan, got killed in war. So because Saul showed no David to mercy, the Lord showed no mercy to Saul. But see, hey, David showed mercy on Saul plenty of times. He showed mercy on other people. I can't think of whose son it was. Hey, but David said, hey, he's going to sit at my table, he and his sons, all of the days of their life. And then when David did go off, he had blood on his hand, and the Lord was merciful to David. But see, 2/3 of our people, they're going to be relentless in hunting down the elect here at the end, because Esau going to be giving all kind of rewards, which is already starting. That's why when they started with the ICE raids and deportations, I believe it was Mississippi, they proposed, hey, let's give $1,000 to everybody that reports an illegal immigrant, and that report leads to a deportation. Hey, that's gonna turn into, you're gonna give you 1,000 CBDCs, 1,000 digital silvers, Um, if you find anybody that's haven't been microchipped, find anybody that's speaking out against the microchip, and you report them, and we get them, you get 1,000 digital currencies, and that's gonna happen again. Just like who was it, Judas? They got 30 pieces of silver for snitching and delivering up Yahweh Shai. All that's gonna play back. That's that no mercy. So what? They're gonna be judged with no mercy here in this lifetime, along with Esau, even the white man, who will also be shown no mercy and judgment. And this is the reason why Saul had no mercy on David. When we come back to the book of 1 Samuel 19:9, and the evil spirit from the Lord was upon Saul, as he sat in his house and his javelin in his hand. David played with his hand. So ultimately, the Lord's going to put an evil spirit on the 2/3 of our people that they have no mercy. Why? Because ultimately the Lord want to destroy them in this lifetime. But they're going to be born into the kingdom where that mercy will be activated and they live in peace. But the Lord got to get them here in this lifetime. We're going to get Psalms 59. We're going to get 6 through 7. It says, they return that evening. They make a noise like a dog and go round about the city. Behold, they belch out with their mouth. Swords are in their lips. For who, they say, doth hear? And again, this is speaking about Saul. Because what does it say in verse 6? They return that evening. So, and when you look at evening, pretty much says the nighttime. Pretty much any time after sunset. But David said they return at evening. Return meaning, hey, they coming back. They coming again. Now let's get that account again. This is 1 Samuel 19. We gonna get the account where where David says they return that evening. Hey, verse 10. Saul sought to smite David even to the wall with the javelin, but he slipped away out of Saul's presence, and he smote the javelin into the wall. David fled and escaped that night. So David escaped that night. Saul also sent messengers unto David's house to watch him and to slay him in the morning. So Saul sent messengers or mighty men that very same night to kill David the next morning. But that's why Psalms 59:6 says they return that evening. Like, Lord, I escaped tonight, and they done came back already. They done returned already to destroy me. So they was around the clock on trying to hunt down David, whom Saul showed no mercy on. But guess what? More importantly, who did show mercy to David? Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah. That's why the Lord preserved David wherever he went. And I can't think of it off top, but I think Sirach or Wisdom of Solomon, that we're going to fall into the hands of the Lord rather into the hands of men. Because with the Lord is great mercy. With men, there is no mercy. So if men in the earth don't show us mercy, Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shah is going to show mercy. To be preserved how David was. House of David going to be preserved here at the end. But Psalm 59:6, they return that evening. But that's why it says, Saul sent messengers that night to David's house. And Michal, David's wife, told him, saying, if thou save not thy life tonight, tomorrow thou shalt be slain. So David's wife told him, hey, you got to leave tonight. You got to run tonight. Because these boys done came back already to kill you. And if you don't leave tonight, they're going to kill you. But that's why David said they return that evening. That's no mercy. Like, damn, I done got away from y'all earlier. Y'all back already. But that's how the 2/3 of our people move today in the streets. The thug life, the gun violence. They come to your house. If they miss you early in the day, they come back later on that night. That's how they're gonna be when they trying to hunt down the house of David, the elect. They're gonna be relentless and trying to get some digital silver to deliver us up. It says they returned that evening. They made noise like a dog and go round about the city. See, they go round about the city. So that's them all over the place and trying to hunt down David. They're gonna be all over the place in America to hunt down the elect. Let's show that real quick. So we're gonna come to the book of Second Ezra, chapter 16. I think verse 73. God damn it, bro. This is Second Ezra, chapter 16, verse 70. For there should be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. See that? It said in every place, in every city, a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. You know, first and foremost, that would be the whole house of Israel, who was commanded to fear the Lord. The 2/3 not gonna do that in this lifetime. So those who only fear the Lord in this lifetime will be the house of David, the elect. Those who serve the Lord, those who resist this beast system. And that great insurrection is gonna be Esau, the other nations rising up against us. But who's gonna be with them? 2/3 of our people, 2/3 of the house of Israel. And it goes on to say, they should be like madmen, sparing none, but still spoiling and destroying those that fear the Lord. So 2/3 of our people, they're gonna be destroyed in the process. And to try to seek some kind of mercy, some kind of comfort, they're gonna join Esau and his campaign on hunting down and cutting off the house of David, the elect. That's gonna be that no mercy. That's why I say it's sparing none. All kind of hell gonna come on the house of David here at the end, worse than what David went through back then. And guess what? 2/3 of our people, they're gonna forward the affliction. They're gonna add to our affliction. But that's why the Lord gonna judge Esau, even the white man with no mercy, and 2/3 of our people with no mercy here in this lifetime. You can stick on verse 7. It says, behold, they belch out with their mouth, swords are in their lips, for they say, doth hear. So David said, swords are in their lips. What does it mean, swords are in their lips? Let's go here to the book of Psalms 55, to the book of Psalms, chapter 55, verse 21. Because David says swords are in their lips. Psalm 55 and 21, the words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. And today, Esau, the white man, he's the one whose words is smoother than butter, because he's a serpent, he's a deceiver. His blessing was the sword. But even Saul back then, his words were smoother than butter. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. Meaning he would speak smooth things, but war is in his heart. He would speak smooth things, but really he trying to see how to destroy you. That's accomplished by Esau, even the white man today, first and foremost. But back then, Saul was doing the same thing. Now let's show that Saul was speaking smooth words, but war was in his heart. This is 1 Samuel 19. We're going to give verse 6, and we're going to give verse 17. Matter of fact, I'm going to just start at 4 through 6. And Jonathan spake good of David unto Saul his father, and said unto him, let not the king sin against his servant, against David, because he hath not sinned against thee, and because his works have been to thee were very good. For he did put his life in his hand, and slew the Philistine, and the Lord wrought a great salvation for all Israel. Thou sawest it and did rejoice. Wherefore then wilt thou sin against innocent blood, to slay David without cause? Saul hearkened unto the voice of Jonathan, and Saul sware, as the Lord liveth, he shall not be slain. So Saul had swore he was going to give up on trying to kill David. So what? His words were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. That's why back to Psalm 59:7, David has said, behold, they belch out their mouth, swords are in their lips. So they would speak, sweet things, but war would still be in his heart. And then not only that, he would speak a word to get you killed. Saul accused David of all kind of evil so that men would turn against him. He constantly told his servants, David out to kill me. But that's why David said swords are in their lips. Because something as simple as a word can get you killed. And that's why Esau, he's going to ban street preaching. He's going to say we domestic terrorists, identity extremists, accuse us of treason. He got deep fakes. Hey, David said they lay all sort of charges against me that I know not. So they're going to accuse us of breaking all these kind of crimes. That's what? That's a sword being in their lips. Speaking the word to turn men against us to get us killed. Hey, when you take word and put an S in front of it, you get sword. Or if you take words, take the S from off the end, you get sword. And we're going to get this in verse 17. He's going to show an example why David says, a sword is in her lips. This is 1 Samuel 19:17. And Saul said to Michal, why hast thou deceived me and sent away my enemy that he is escaped? So Saul had to always paint the picture that David is an enemy. David's seeking to kill me. Saul had to paint that picture. He had to push that narrative, to turn the hearts of men against David. That's why David said a sword is in their lips. He's talking about his own people. And if you see that today, our own people, they constantly rising up and speaking against us, against the Hebrew Israelites, calling us in the cult, demonic, speaking all manner of evil against us, to what? To turn others against us. And eventually all these people that turned against us, who the Lord put an evil spirit on, and they're going to seek to kill us as well. But that's how the scriptures say, they'll become your enemy because I have told you the truth. This is Psalms 59:8. But thou, O Lord, shalt laugh at them. Thou shalt have all of the heathen in derision. I missed the precept earlier, but when it says thou shalt laugh at them, but it goes on to say you should have all of the heathen in derision. David is speaking about the heathen, but in context, and this was written when he was running from Saul, because the house of Saul in this lifetime, in the future, the 2/3 of Israel, they liken unto the heathen. And let's show why. We're going to get this in the book of Galatians 6:16. It says, and as many as walk according to this rule, those who live according to the word, peace be on them and mercy upon the Israel of God. So upon the Israel of the Most High. So there's two kinds of Israels. You got the Israel of the Most High, then you got the Israel of the world. Hey, Saul back then, after he received that evil spirit, he was the Israel of the world. He was no more Israel of the Most High. 2/3 of our people today, they're the Israel of the world. They're Israelites, but they no different than the heathen nations who seek to destroy those who fear the Lord. So back to Psalm 59:8, but thou, O Lord, shall laugh at them. Thou shalt have all of the heathen in derision. He's like, the white man, he's the heathen, the other nations, but also 2/3 of our people who are not the Israel of the Most High. Why? Because they don't walk according to this word. Now we gonna get this. Why? And David said, "Thou shalt laugh at them. Thou shalt laugh at the heathen." How is the Lord going to laugh at them? Well, let's get this in Psalms 37. I think we're going to get 12 through 13. Because the Lord is laughing right now, and the Lord laughs every day. This is Psalm 37 and 12 and 13. The wicked plotteth against the just, and gnasheth upon him with his teeth. The Lord shall laugh at him, for he seeth that his day is coming. So that's the reason that the Lord laughing, because the wicked that plot against the just, pretty much Esau eating the white man, he's the wicked. The other nations that's confederate with the white man, they the wicked. The 2/3 of Israel, who's also confederate with the white man, they the wicked, who plot against the just, which will be the elect, the house of David. The Lord is laughing because he see that the day of the wicked is coming. How's the Lord laughing? Through us here in the earth. That's why when we receive bad news and receive, different judgments and plagues that's happening, if you're in the right mind, in the right spirit, you're gonna laugh and smile at the vengeance. Matter of fact, let me get that real quick. Hey, this is the book of Revelation, chapter 18, verse 20. It says, "Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and you holy apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her." So ultimately, we're going to rejoice at the nuclear destruction. But we even rejoicing at the vengeance that's happening now, at the plagues, at the various judgments. We laughing now. Why? Because that just means that the day of the wicked is nearer than we believe. Psalm 59 and 8 again, "But thou, O Lord, shall laugh at them." The Lord speaks through the prophets, he laughs through the prophets. But not just the prophets, but those who will receive the words of the prophets, that they might be saved. In other words, they in one spirit and one mind with the Lord. So the whole chain of command, Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, the Holy Spirits, Holy Angels, the servants, the prophets, and the true believers in Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, all laughing together. Because the day of the wicked is coming. So if you mourn at the evils that's taking place, you're not in the right spirit. You should be rejoicing. Hey, just be happy it didn't happen to you. Everybody that get killed, all these plagues that are happening, hey, that's evil being removed from the earth. You also gonna get this in Psalms 59 and 9. It says, "Because of his strength will I wait upon thee, for Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is my defense." But it says, because of his strength. The strength of who? The strength of our enemies. Now, David wrote this when he was running from Saul. And because Saul, in the house of Saul, at the beginning, they were mighty. And that's why the scriptures say, the house of Saul waxed weaker. Well, to grow weak, that means you were once powerful. But David said, because of his strength, I will wait upon thee. Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai is my defense. Our people ain't got no military today, but who's our enemy today? Who's mighty in power? Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, and the other nations. That's why when we get this, we're gonna hit the book of Psalms, chapter 18 and 17. Hey, what's up, bro?
How you doing?
All right, how you doing? All right. This is the book of Psalms 18 and 17. Straight to the point. Psalms 18 and 17. "He delivered me from my strong enemy." So in Psalm 59, who is the strong enemy? It would be the house of Saul, who was mighty in power in the beginning. David was delivered from that strong enemy, the house of Saul. He was delivered from that strong enemy, Goliath, which today would represent the other nations. But again, the strong enemy today be Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, and the other nations. And in the 2/3 of our people, because they got power very limited under Esau. Because Esau gonna give them a badge, give them a firearm, etc. So Psalm 18 and 17, "He delivered me from my strong enemy and from them which hated me, for they were too strong for me." So what David was running from, he was constantly on the move. It was too much for him. And we're going to be delivered from all of those that hate us today. Luke 1:70, we should be delivered from our enemies and from all that hate us. And what David say, for they were too strong for me. Esau, even the white man, is too strong for us. That's why the Lord said in Isaiah, I believe 40, fear not, thou worm Jacob. The Lord called us, worms, but the wicked is referred to as a lion. Is referred to, well, that's why David said, matter of fact, I'm gonna get this. This is Psalms 37 and 35. I have seen the wicked in great power, spreading himself like a green bay tree. So the wicked, Esau, even the white man, is in great power. That's why David said, Psalms 18 and 17, he delivered me from my strong enemy, from them which hated me, for they were too strong for me. So, David couldn't do nothing with his enemies on his own. But that's why David said in Psalms 50, that's why David said in Psalms 59 and 9, because of his strength will I wait upon thee, for God is my defense. So because of the strength of our enemies, what? All we can do is wait. That's why the Lord said, wait on him until he rise up to the prey. Because on our own, we can do nothing. That's why David said, because of his strength will I wait upon thee. People ask what we gonna do as things get worse. What we gonna do? You saw the white man come after us. Ain't nothing we can do. We gonna wait on the Lord. That's why the scripture say, blessed to see who wait on the Lord. It says, for God is my defense. And so the Lord is gonna step in. And the Lord stepped in plenty of times for David. And not just David, the servants, the prophets. The scriptures say the things written aforetime was written for our learning to give us hope. So we see how the Lord stepped in for those who fear him, that called on his name. And that's to teach us that the Lord is going to step in on our behalf again if we fear him and call on his name. Now, this is the book of Psalms 59, verse 10. The God of mercy shall prevent me. God shall let me see my desire upon my enemies. So David saw his desire upon his enemies. All of David's enemies got put in the dirt. Let's show what David's desire was for his enemies. Let's go back up. This is Psalms 59 and 8. But thou, O Lord, shall laugh at them. No, that ain't what I'm looking for. Hold on. Psalms 59 and 5. Thou therefore, Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, God of hosts, the God of Israel. It says, awake to visit all of the heathen, and awake to the judgments. It says, be not merciful to any wicked transgressors. So when David say, be not merciful to wicked transgressors, David, in other words, said, hey, show the wicked no mercy. Hey, put them in the dirt, destroying from off the earth. Then when you jump down to verse 10, which is now one of my favorite precepts, the God of my mercy shall prevent me. Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai shall let me see my desire upon my enemies. So David's desire was for his enemies to be put in the dirt. He didn't pray for his enemies. He didn't turn the other cheek. He didn't say, you go your way, I'm gonna go my way. No, David prayed for his enemies to be shown no mercy. And today, our people, they want reparations. They want to be even with Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, or they want the white man to just leave us alone. No. The true worshipers of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai. The true worshipers of Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai, we're going to have a certain desire upon our enemies. We're going to want our enemies to be put in the dirt as well. And what? The Lord is going to honor that. That's why when we come to Revelation 13 and 10, it say, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. So the true saints, the true believers in Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai is waiting on that day of vengeance. Again, not reparations, not being even with the white man, not having our own land and our own businesses, not higher wages, not living in peace with the enemy, acting like, we don't exist. No. The true believers in the God of the Bible is going to pray for their enemies to be put in the dirt. Get that again. Psalm 59:10. The God of my mercy shall prevent me. A God shall let me see my desire upon my enemies. So we praying that our enemies are shown no mercy. Not just Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, but also the 2/3 of our people. So yeah, we praying up curses and praying for the death of our own people. And those who ain't caught on yet, they're going to be praying for the death of their own people too, when their family and friends trying to get them killed. Now, let's get this. I'm already there. This is the book of Ecclesiasticus, also known as Sirach, chapter 25, verse 7. There be 9 things which I have judged in my heart to be happy, and the 10th what I utter with my tongue. A man that have joy of his children. Hey, we got that today. But this is the point. With the Lord judgeth to be happy, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy. For that's true happiness. The joy of children, and when you live to see the fall of your enemies. That's your enemies being put in the dirt. No mercy. And David saw his enemies put in the dirt. And the house of Saul got destroyed. And Goliath, the Philistines, constantly got destroyed. The Edomites, the other nations, and anybody who came up against David got put in the dirt. But that's why, again, Psalms 59:10, God shall let me see my desire upon my enemies. So that happened for David back then. But guess what? According to prophecy, through the regeneration, David is back once again to see his desire upon his enemies. And that's why I think David is alive, as opposed to being in the spirit world. Because David got to be back to see his enemies be put in the dirt. David constantly prayed for the death of his enemies. Well, it only makes sense that David will be here in the earth to see his enemies put in the dirt. Now I'm gonna get this. And guess what? When David said to see my desires upon my enemies, he's not just speaking to himself here in the future, but the whole house of David. They will have that one desire to see their enemies be cut off. Now we're gonna get this. God damn, bro. Okay, it's fine. I don't know why you're playing with me, bro. Bro, I can't wait till we done with these phones. This is Psalms 41:5. This is a psalm of David. My enemies speak evil of me. When shall he die? And his name perish. Beginning with Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. That applies today, because David will be back through the regeneration today. The whole house of David, the service of prophets. David said, my enemies speak evil of me. Our enemies is speaking evil of us right now. Esau, Edom, the so-called white man, through his propaganda, his media, slandering us. Also the 2/3 of our people. They speaking evil of the truth. Making themselves the enemy to the Lord, and therefore they are enemies as well. Because David said, do I not hate them that rise up against thee? Count them my enemies. Psalms 41:5, my evil speak evil of me. That's happening today worldwide. David said, when shall he die? Back to Psalm 59:10, at the end of it, it says, God shall let me see my desire upon my enemies. So David's desire was for the death of his enemies. Not only back then, but here today. The whole house of David, the elect, they would had the same desire for the death of their enemies. That's why we say death to America, death to Babylon. We speaking the death of our enemies to existence. What is the Lord that's going to let us to see that? Now we're going to also get this. Yeah, so David said, when shall he die? It only makes sense that David would see the destruction of America, all the way through by being here on the earth. But that ain't the focus. But oh, that was it. So yeah, man, even David says, my enemies speak evil, when shall he die? Now, the true worshipers of Yahweh Bashim Yahweh, we all had that same thought. When is our enemies going to be cut off? And the Lord is going to bless us to let us see it. That's why he says, blessed is he who liveth to see the downfall of his enemies. That includes the 2/3 of our people. In Psalms 58 and 10 said what? We're going to wash our feet in the blood of the wicked. And that's why Revelation 18 and 20 says, we're going to rejoice at the vengeance. Now, hey, shalom to everybody that's tuning in now and will tune in. Hey, but that's the first half of Psalms chapter 59. We'll be back with it tomorrow, Lord willing. But let's give all praise and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. Double honor to the elders, taught us this truth by the Holy Spirit. Honor to the brothers, making their life. Honor to the brothers, risking their life in freedom to push the gospel. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect. Till next time, shalom.